So I spent a fair chunk of last year getting my chi handed to me by a divine warrior, castigated by an unholy triumvirate, pulverized by agents of the underworld, deceived by an artificial intelligence, eaten by an eldritch horror, and consumed by holy light. But with the hundreds of soul-shattering deaths and countless hours invested, I realized two poignant truths. First, gods are hard to beat. Second, and more importantly, the divinities I battled in these games all represent a conflicting idea, an incongruity in their very essence that caught my attention, a contradiction I'd like to call the God paradox. Let me explain. Have you ever sat with a piece of art, or a picture you took on your phone? Or maybe you've seen a sprawling city from the sky. At first, these are visually flawless. They present essence in stunning perfection. But what happens when you look closer? Brushstrokes materialize, smooth features turn to grainy pixels, the carnage of millions fills the streets. In this world of scrutiny, things take on a new, imperfect reality. Blemishes show, and so too it seems with gods. Deities are often presented as infallible, omniscient, or omnipotent, and believed to be flawless in every way. But as we approach them, our scrutiny breaks through layers of mysticism to reveal something shocking. Many of these gods we once thought unassailable are anything but. They assume mortal and even human qualities. As we come closer to gods, they lose their sanctity. This is the heart of the God paradox. Beauty is in distance. Is distance, too, the home of divinity? There are tens of thousands of gods smashed together in dozens of pantheons in countless religions. And that's just in our own myth and history. Don't get me started on all the deities in works of fiction, fantasy, and video games. Well, maybe do. Combined, the divinities represent points along the God paradox spectrum. And it is a spectrum. At one end sit gods who retain their unimpeachable authority, while at the opposite dwell those who've lost all semblance of holiness. The spectrum of the God paradox depends on our distance from the divine. As that shrinks, they appear to move from one end to the other. Now, what do I mean when I say get closer or approach? First is spatial proximity. Either we or the characters come into physical contact or closeness with divine entities. This is also taken in the familial sense, deities that tie themselves to mortals, demigods and others through shared bloodlines. Second is revelation or knowledge. The closer we and the characters get to understanding holy beings, elevation through wisdom. With that out of the way, let's dive in. Two mythologies of our own past paint a good picture of the God paradox. The ancient Greek tradition of the West, with its cults devoted to particular figures within an ever-expanding pantheon, and the ancient Chinese tradition of the East, an amalgamation of philosophical, religious principles gathered from Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist sources. Its pantheon of gods more sprawling than even its Greek counterpart. Both antique mythologies were built upon a structured hierarchy of immortals from the supreme progenitors of the universe to the deified mortal. As one moves down this holy pecking order, they work from one end of the paradoxical spectrum to the other. In the Greek myth of Hesiod's theogony, chaos is the first thing to exist. From it are born Gaia, Eros, and Tartarus, among others. These are the primordial deities, manifestations of foundational forces in the universe. The primordials are more abstract than personified. They represent locations, emotions, ideas, and aspects of nature. They're the furthest removed from humans and least understood, standing atop the hierarchy as forefathers of other gods. Next come the Titans, or the old gods of ancient Greece, the first generation of children born from the primordials. The Titans weren't widely worshipped by Greeks and quickly supplanted by their own children, the Olympian gods. The 12 deities of the second generation include such notables as Zeus, Artemis, Poseidon, Athena, and Hera. As gods, the Olympians are closer to humanity, more understood, and as consequence, share in many ungodlike human blemishes. Take Zeus, for example, a serial philanderer who's believed to have bedded countless women and fathered over 100 children. Or Ares, the violent god of war who betrayed the Greeks and supported their Trojan rivals. Not very godlike, huh? Though mortals revere the Olympians, these gods are fickle and spiteful. They have personalities and character flaws, vices, as much as virtues, and they're not all powerful, bound to fate as mortals are. Now, taking that one step further, we have the demigods, individuals born from union between mortal and immortal. These individuals have fallen even further down the hierarchy and represent a divinity weakened by its inherent impurity. They are most like us because they are us. The tiered structure of the Greek pantheon corresponds with the god paradox. As we come down the tiers, we come closer to these gods physically, and they appear less divine. The 2020 roguelike Hades, released by Supergiant, beautifully highlights the tarnished sanctity of the Olympians as immortals that have approached humankind in both the physical and genetic sense. Zagreus, son of Hades, must fight through the underworld and against its agents, gathering boons from the gods on Olympus or incurring their wrath as he progresses his journey. While talking to the Olympians, we see their personalities. We can stir their ire. We learn of their internal squabbling, their vices and follies. These beings of myth are quite human and made all the more relatable by the fact that Zagreus is himself numbered among them. So from our character's standpoint, the distance is completely obliterated. Juxtaposed to this sits Chaos in a realm apart from Tartarus. Chaos has untold power, beyond even the Olympians' comprehension, but it's an entity less human, more perilous, and completely inscrutable. We are told Chaos is a trickster, but not a deceiver, and so powerful are its boons that they come front-loaded with a tragic curse. Distanced from Zagreus in knowledge and space, Chaos retains more of what makes it a divinity in the Prince of the Underworld's eyes. The Chinese mythological hierarchy begins with Shangdi, the Lord above, creator of heaven, earth, and the universe. Shangdi was later conflated with Tian, or simply heaven, and also was known as the heavenly ruling highest deity, paralleled to the concept of the Jade Emperor, or ruler of heaven. The supreme deity both transcends our physical plane of existence and encompasses it. All gods are manifestations of Qi, the power of heaven, or manifestations of Tao in Taoist thought. And in this mythology, all things are connected in a universal oneness. If this seems a little bit nebulous or convoluted, it's because it is. Heaven, Tao, the universal deity, is believed to be beyond human comprehension. We can't adequately describe the concept, and this god is so distanced from us, it is all-powerful and unknowable. But beneath Shangdi, the Chinese pantheon is full of gods and immortals that represent things we understand, that are strong but not all-powerful, that are just but not incorruptible. The three pure ones of the Tao, the Jade Emperor, the Queen Mother of the West and Lord Father of the East, these primordial deities are amongst the most influential and sit in high places distant from mortals. Beneath them are personifications of nature, spirits of seasons, emotions, and phenomena, and also deified versions of legendary figures from the ancient past. Chinese folk religion also takes from Buddhist beliefs surrounding Buddhas who've achieved the highest level of spiritual enlightenment, bodhisattvas who are on the path towards Buddhahood, Dharma protectors, devas, and other deities besides. Something unique to Taoist folk myth is the presence of alchemists and followers of the way that attempted to achieve immortality and ascend themselves to heaven. Through understanding of the spiritual and physical universe, the gods that had seemed so distant in life would become relatable as they themselves ascended. This approaching of the gods from enlightenment renders them less than all-powerful, a unique twist on the god paradox in which the mortal joins divine ranks. The relationship of Chinese folk and Buddhist mythology are on full display in Black Myth Wukong, published in 2024 by Game Science. This is a continuation of the story of Sun Wukong, Monkey King and victorious fighting Buddha from the Chinese classic Journey to the West. In it, we struggle against the pantheons of both Eastern and Western heaven to reclaim the legend of Wukong and fulfill our destiny as his inheritor. As the title suggests, this telling shows a darker side to Sun Wukong's myth. It highlights the black motivations of beings once thought benevolent and divine. For one, the Bodhisattva Lingchi appears more self-interested, ruining the kingdom of flowing sands and surrounding area for supporting his wayward disciple Yellowwind Sage. And right at the outset, The deities of Eastern Heaven killed Wukong despite his Buddhahood, out of both fear and envy. They so despised Monkey King that only his death could satisfy them. Such streaks of mortal passions highlight the God paradox, and as the player character uncovers further truths, knowledge diminishes the authority of the divine. Two classics in science fiction and fantasy are Frank Herbert's Dune Saga and J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium, respectively, and both contain gods or godlike figures. Herbert's Imperium of Mankind spans the known universe and has an extensive history of noble families, anti-machine sentiment, intrigue and conflict as major players fight for the priceless substance known as spice melange, found only on the desert planet Arrakis. The Dune Saga covers many thousands of years of history and highlights flashpoints in mankind's struggle to adapt to a dangerous universe. In God Emperor of Dune, we see the creation of a religion that had its beginnings with Dune's protagonist, Paul Atreides, and has evolved over 3,500 years in the reign of his son, Leto II, a human sandworm hybrid and the eponymous God Emperor of the universe. Leto and his influence illustrate the spatial component of the God paradox. Just like his metamorphosis into a sandworm, time distances Leto from the human species and transforms his myth. As centuries turn to millennia, the facts surrounding his early life and even his current form are obscured by layers of ritual, mystique, and flat-out lies. The God Emperor has no contemporaries. They've all died out. The citizens of his imperium are left only with the deity he has created through carefully crafted myth-making. Those people who are marginalized, who exist at the boundaries of the imperium, never see the God Emperor and know of him only through the message of his fish-speaker warriors and priests. As such, Leto II has transcended humanity entirely. He's a holy figure beyond their understanding, and his actions are taken as prophesied salvation. But those of his inner circle or other factions that interact with him directly see the God Emperor as less divine. Many, in fact, view him as a tyrant and abomination and plot actively for his death. To others, there is Leto the man, who still retains a shred of his humanity, and Leto the worm, who has become not a god, but something horrible. Regardless, their proximity allows them to dispel the mysticism surrounding him and his religion, seeing briefly his true essence. Even in the millennia following his death, there are those who revere Leto as a god and preserve his ritual, but the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, who've been elevated in knowledge by access to memories of their past lives, use such intimate experience to dispel the God Emperor, seeing him as the tyrant he truly was. The cosmological myth of Middle-earth, on the other hand, is an example of a distant, omniscient God who remains aloof and unknown to mortals throughout existence. Ea, the physical universe, and Arda, the world on which Middle-earth is found, were both creations of the One, Eru Iluvatar, supreme divinity and source of all there is. Eru Iluvatar created spirits called the Ainur to tend Arda and prepare it for the coming of his children, elves and men. The most powerful of the Ainur were the Valar, who descended to Arda and were themselves considered gods by the races born there. In all Middle-earth's history, Eru Iluvatar never came from the timeless halls himself, and only once did he make his presence felt. When the arrogance and vanity of men led them to war against the Valar, Iluvatar brought forth a great changing of the world and destroyed Numenor, brilliant kingdom of men. This act highlighted Eru's unbounded and unequaled might, considered even more mystic by his unapproachable nature. Most beings by the time of Lord of the Rings are oblivious to Eru Iluvatar, and few know even of the godlike Valar. In this manner, the divine forces of Tolkien's work retain their perfection. 2023's Lords of the Fallen by Hexworks Studios contrasts well a god who has retained their mystical divinity with one nearer, more flawed. The game unfolds in the now broken kingdom of Mornstead, whose religious order watched over the prison of Adir, a god exiled millennia ago and primary antagonist of the game, who plots his return. The player character is consecrated into the Order of the Dark Crusaders, charged with cleansing Mornstead of blight and strengthening the seals on Adir's prison. Religion is central to Lords of the Fallen, as are its gods who conflict with one another through mortal surrogates. On one hand sits Aureus, the divine god of heavenly light, lightning and radiance, justice and judgment. He's the holy deity of both the Dark Crusaders and the military order of Hallowed Sentinels in Mornstead. Referenced only in dialogue, item description, and lore, Aureus maintains aloofness far from the fallen kingdom. We never interact with him directly, but feel his presence in our devotion, measured through the statistic of radiance, which allows us to cast powerful spells, blessed by Aureus himself. He's revered as a benevolent god, but one who still punishes the sinful. We can hardly make our own decision about Aureus, as most information is distorted through subjective accounts. But the one time we do witness his presence comes at the end of the game. For our dedication to the cause, Aureus obliterates us in light before raining down pillars of radiant destruction to smite the sinful. Very Old Testament. On the other hand sits Adir, the god imprisoned who works to break free. Like Aureus, Adir sends agents across Mornstead to effect his return. Unlike Aureus, however, Adir converses with us directly, and we approach him physically in the climax of one of the game's various endings. Here, in his prison, we see a god who is wrathful but weak, a being that is emotional, fearful, possessed of many human sentiments, and also who looks surprisingly like us. This god, whom we fought throughout Mornstead, has fallen so far he doesn't even give battle himself, rather sending forth hordes of wretched souls. In Adir we see many aspects of our own nature, which does well to humanize him, but in the same stroke shatters his deification. He's a powerful being, sure, but hardly what we might expect from a god. Stellar Blade, released by Shift Up Studios in 2024, is full of religious reference to Christianity and early Gnosticism. The protagonist, Eve, is an angel heaven sent to reclaim Earth from an aggressive and alien species known as Natibas that have laid waste to much of the planet. Eve is aided in her quest by Adam, and the last sanctuary for the Andro-Eidos humans is the desert bastion of Zion. Eve was a member of a tactical military unit of divers dispatched by Mother Sphere. This entity stands in as God for the humans who remain on Earth. She's the central figure of their religion, the source of their faith, and the one who promises to deliver their salvation. Through much of the game, Mother Sphere remains mysterious. She's mentioned by transcripts and memories of fallen humans, and Eve contemplates her designs. But the deity isn't well understood. Stellar Blade illustrates how knowledge and discovery pulls Mother Sphere from her dais of holiness. As Eve surveys the ruins of past civilizations, two hard truths present themselves. One, the Natibas are actually the genetic descendants of humankind, while the Andro-Eidos are artificial constructs, androids manufactured rather than humans born. 2. Mother Sphere is no god, but rather an artificial, sentient superintelligence attempting to either eradicate or integrate the genetic inheritors of the human race through her Eve protocol. She determined that humanity in its current form was weak and obsolete, so created the Andro-Eidos to supplant the species. As Eve gains clarity on Mother Sphere's nature and her intended goals, the being falls from godhood. And in the final moments of the game, we see Mother Sphere for what she truly is, an artificial intelligence programmed and self-directed in its mission. Enlightenment elevates Eve and pulls Mother Sphere from her holy position. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? This familiar philosophical thought experiment is centered on the principles of observation, but opens itself to general metaphysical questions on the nature of perception, and I've found it ties into the nature of divine essence in fiction and fantasy. If there is a deity, but no one to receive its gifts or submit to its praises, does it still hold power, and can it still be considered a god? Or, in the immortal words of Frank Ocean,
what's a god to a non-believer who don't believe in anything?
Another interesting paradox arises across media in which gods, beings believed to hold limitless power and spiritual eminence, nonetheless require the devotion of subjects for said power, and in some cases, as an existential necessity. How then can they truly possess the omniscience and omnipotence ascribed to them? Another unusual god paradox unfolds. The card game Magic the Gathering is set in a fictional multiverse that contains countless planes of existence, each inhabited by unique creatures, cultures, civilizations, and suffused with magical essence. The card types and mechanics of the game correlate to in-universe lore as stories unfold across the multiverse. On the plane of Theros, itself inspired by the culture of ancient Greece, there exists a pantheon of gods. This plane is unique in that faith and devotion possess real power, and the gods were born from the thoughts and prayers of the mortals that worship them. The Theran gods' appearances, personalities, realms of influence and power are all drawn from mortal belief, and therefore rely on a steady stream of worship. Without shrines and rituals to support them, the gods would fade in capability, and ultimately from existence. This is portrayed in-game through the devotion mechanic. The gods have strong abilities but don't manifest on the battlefield as creatures until the players have proven their worth through the god's associated color of mana. And in the lore, Theran deities need the belief of their subjects to remain empowered. When the plane was attacked and corrupted by an outside threat, the gods too were weakened and corrupted, highlighting the distinct power of belief on Theros. Another example of this paradox of devotion is illustrated throughout the Malazan Book of the Fallen epic fantasy series written by Steven Erikson. Gods in the Malazan world are powerful beings, also called ascendants, in that they have transcended death. Each god commands an aspect of magic and reality through control of a warren, a realm of otherworldly power used as a source of energy that is channeled by mages, priests, and others. The gods of Malazan can dwell within these warrens as well as walk the mortal realm, and over the centuries many pantheons of gods have risen across different cultures or civilizations. A god's key distinguishing trait is that they have worshippers whose faith greatly empowers them. But this devotion is double-edged. If the will of the followers surpasses the god, they are beholden to their flock. And if a god's faithful perpetrate acts antithetical to the god's existence, harm or worse could come to them. Greatest of all, a god can lose their position through the absence of faith. Without mortals who worship, they become emasculated and eventually fade from memory. As the elder god Cruel states, every god falls at a mortal's hands. So again, we see this bizarre paradox that unfolds when a supreme deity is beholden to or reliant upon their followers. How gods are all powerful only if their devoted believe them to be, and that a god is little without a flock. As a final example, a unique blend of both paradoxes can be found in Blasphemous, a 2019 Metroidvania developed by the Game Kitchen and heavily influenced by Spanish Catholicism. The land of Custodia is steeped in piety and burdened by guilt. A divine essence called the Miracle is worshipped by all, and its will manifests in everything. Its word must be interpreted through the Mother of Mothers Church, led by High Pontiff Escobar, who rules the theocracy over Custodia. At first, the miracle appears distant and inscrutable. A popular saying goes, "Twisted are the ways of the miracle," in that they are beyond comprehension. The miracle also appears omnipotent and omniscient, doling out life-saving boons or inflicting irreparable curses. As the penitent one, the player character journeys across Custodia to defeat wayward Escobar. They discover the miracle isn't all it seems. By uncovering profane knowledge, the penitent one learns the miracle as a force is being controlled by a sinister, eldritch being known as the High Wills on the other side of the dream, intent on consuming souls to empower its own ascension. The penitent one discovers a conspiracy long ago that hid the truth of this malevolent entity from the mortals that paid it worship, and upon confronting the High Wills directly, the illusion of their supreme divinity is shattered. Knowledge brings scrutiny. Now, the High Wills also demonstrate the paradox of power in worship. We learn that their existence is predicated on mortal thought and belief. They are what they are because mortal faith willed them into existence. Evil and predatory as they seem, The wills are a product of their followers, and might not have manifested without them. The sequel, Blasphemous 2, transpires a millennium after the events of the original game, and demonstrates the weakness of a divinity without its congregation. In the centuries that followed, most of Custodia had forgotten the miracle. Without their prayer, it withered through neglect. When an anguished couple finally revived old rituals and pled to the miracle, it answered, but not in the way intended. The miracle was so reduced that it couldn't control its powers and unleashed a terrible plague upon the city of the blessed name. It tries, through its child, the incarnate devotion, to instill worship once more and inspire mortals to empower it again through their faith. From this perspective, the miracle inhabits the paradox of a divine essence believed to be all-powerful, but nonetheless one that requires its humans to achieve such levels. Gods are often thought of as all-knowing, all-powerful, and untouchable beings who rise above mortal passions, but they embody strange paradoxes that challenge preconceived notions on their true essence. In media and in our own history, the God paradox is present and makes us question spiritual reality. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the God paradox, what examples you've seen in different media, and any other surprising realities surrounding divine entities in the comments below. See you in the next one.